Welcome to Appeal Yourself Off the Mat edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Flying solo today, our man Mike Jones. I'm in total envy. I was flying back to the East Coast on a red eye from Las Vegas, where he had spent the previous several days as a ringer in a golf tournament and no doubt plunging his brains out. So, congratulations to him on having a successful trip and unable to make it with us here in his usual Monday morning spot. But that shouldn't stop us from having a great time because, wow, sports overload over the weekend, and you couldn't have asked for much more in the way of drama and trauma if you happen to be a bettor, especially if you were betting the Detroit Pistons to win their series against the New York Knickerbockers. You're now staring at a very big, fat, ugly red number because teams that are up 3-1 in NBA playoff series throughout the history of the league are 275 and 13 in closing out those series. 275 and 13. I can name you one of the 13, of course, was the Cleveland Cavaliers coming back from 3-1 down in the finals, the championship with LeBron against the Golden State Warriors. But those are not favorable numbers, people. If you're betting into that, you're in trouble. And if you had Detroit in the series, an underdog against the New York Knickerbockers, wow. I remember when I got into organized baseball for the first time. My family had moved from Brooklyn, New York, where we played every hybrid version of baseball that you could possibly dream up and imagine. Stoop ball, stake ball, punch ball. And got out to Long Island when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And first time playing organized baseball. I was in Little League Baseball in Belmore, New York. And what struck me and still stays with me 50, 60 some odd years later, is it 60? Yeah, that's a big number too, speaking of big numbers, was that virtually every game was played under protest. And whether it was the overly intrusive, and this was a story that took life and manifested itself, infused itself into the NFL draft, the intrusive parent, the Little League parent, as they're known, that is going to become a problem for the coach and or just a general hindrance to the team overall that got involved, or if it was some kind of rule that was misinterpreted badly by the umpires who tended to not necessarily make you think that, hey, this guy's going to be the next Nestor Shylock. Was it Shylock or Shylark? It could have been Shylark because some of the calls, I guess, that you've seen over the years. But when you get into the category of bad calls, where the referees almost immediately after the game was over, they turn around and say, oh, well, we blew that one. In the Knicks-Detroit series, the game ends up 94-93. Knicks take a commanding 3-1 lead in their series over the upstart Detroit Pistons, a team that was face down in the gutter last year. 14-68. They come back. They win 44 under J.B. Bickerstaff. We've been barking about how we thought that J.B. Bickerstaff should be the coach of the year over Kenny Atkinson, but that didn't happen. 9-1 looked like a pretty tasty price for a guy that tripled the team's number of victories in the course of one regular season. Of course, the contrast to that is Atkinson won 20 more games with a Cleveland Cavalier team that was essentially the same as the one that fired Bickerstaff the year before. So who knows? So we're splitting hairs on that particular argument. But the bottom line is Detroit Pistons, upstart team. Maybe you liked them a little bit. Gave them a chance against the New York Knicks, who you weren't overwhelmingly impressed with. And you have a chance to be 2-2 in a series. Guy gets fouled clearly in the corner. He's going to go to the stripe for three. It was the old NBA 3 to make 2. And the Pistons, with no time left, then walk away with a victory. They're 2-2 in the series, and now you have somewhat of a toss-up. Pistons were competitive in the games at the Garden. They even won one of the games after collapsing in the fourth quarter in game number 1. Everything's going your way. I mean, to handicap this series and have it taken away from you on a call like that or a non-call, where immediately thereafter the refs admit, I mean, Bickerstaff is screaming at these referees, and you're thinking he should file a protest like the old days in the Little League. Now, it will be clearly to no avail. We all know that. But what if they made them all go back out there and put this guy on the stripe for 3 shot attempts, and all he has to do is sink 2 of the 3? And the series is 2-2, and the Pistons walk away with a victory, and at least a fighting chance to pull that series out for all of their faithful backers that were willing to take a shot at whatever the odds were going into the series. I would imagine it was somewhere in the category of 3-1. in that neighborhood if you were betting the Pistons to take it in any number of games, which you're thinking there's still a possibility that that series goes 7 games anyway. But, well, no. I mean, yeah, 3-1, not happening, right? Pistons dead, and a blown call changes the course of virtually everything in that spot. That was part of the NBA action yesterday. I had a couple of really good games, and then we have action tonight. And we'll see if we can formulate some kind of an opinion here, because we are battling in town here with the Cleveland Cavaliers now up 3-0 after a complete annihilation of the Miami Heat in the game on Saturday. And there were some people speculating that, well, you know what, you can't discount the Heat. They have a couple of all-stars in the starting lineup, although are they premier all-stars in Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo? All-stars nonetheless. It's still a distinction in the NBA with all the great players that there are. But they made no account of himself. I mean, a disgrace in game number 3. As the Cavaliers, you would think maybe after experiencing a little bit of pressure in that second game, the lead narrowed down to 2 before they pulled away and won it, and went up 2-0. They left nothing to chance, though. However, in game number 3, as it was an embarrassment. So this is where South Beach syndrome should factor into your handicapping tonight, because this isn't like a team that had a Sunday off and are up 3-0, comfortable lead. You had to go to the record books for the franchise biggest loss, biggest win in franchise playoff history, and I think you had a check mark on both. That this was the most horrendous, horrific, lopsided loss the Miami Heat had suffered, and that it was the biggest margin of victory by a Cleveland team that had a championship that year with LeBron James. So that was as much of an atrocity as you could possibly have in Game 3. Now, so what happens in Game 4? 8.5 you're laying tonight with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Are you willing to do it? That would be the question that you have to ask yourself. And we don't have any reports about the best 6-man in basketball, which would be so-called South Beach. And that's not the only area that you can frequent. But if you're a young NBA player and you have a bunch of money, you have a 3-0 lead over a Miami Heat team that clearly is not going to come back and win the next 4, and you have a day off in South Florida, it's not like you're going back to L.A. After this. It's not like you're going back to New York or even Boston or San Francisco. You're going back to Cleveland, Ohio. I don't want to say it's an armpit of the United States of America, but it's been perceived as such by others that are far sharper at identifying these things than me. So is it possible? I remember having to go down and cover some Heat shoot-arounds when the 76ers and Allen Iverson were in town. And everybody's looking around going, hey, where the hell is Iverson? And he would come stumbling in there like he'd been on an all-night bender, which he clearly had. And you're asking yourself, what impact might this have, this condition that he finds himself in? Then, I mean, will he be able to turn that around by game time? Because certainly it looks like a wreck of a human being showing up here. And, I don't want to imply that there were, any illegal substances involved, but, the man was a wreck. Does that happen to the Cavaliers tonight? That would be the sole influence in wanting to lay 8.5, or even boldly taking a taste with the Miami Heat on the money line, because you would have to think if ever there was an incident, a case, an example of where the so-called South Beach syndrome would factor into your wagering equations, it would be tonight with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat. That being said, if you watch this last game, there's no way to envision it being close. But thinking on South Beach syndrome, I'm going to take 8.5 points tonight with the Miami Heat against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and hope the Heat get this whole Heat culture thing going, recover from the fact that Jimmy Butler is no longer a member of the team. No team went through more drama this year than the Miami Heat did, I think, in the NBA, unless Dallas Mavericks, I guess you could say, shook it up pretty badly. And the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, were part of that deal where they acquired Luka, who looks like he's on the brink of elimination after a brilliant finish to the ball game. And that was a very exciting game yesterday. Minnesota, Los Angeles Lakers. I would imagine many people took it on the chin there, thinking that the Lakers were going to bounce back. They did to an extent. They had a lead late in the ball game. That evaporated. And then Minnesota makes key plays down the stretch as you're looking at the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, emerging again in the conversation. It was about somewhere in the postseason last year where people started to speculate, hey, doesn't this guy's name belong among the elite and all of the NBA? And maybe it does. An exciting player, no doubt. 40 points and a 113 victory. So that series now falls into that dreaded category of 275 and 13, where Minnesota now leads the Lakers 3-1. There was some speculation earlier this season by many NBA analysts that the league could only be saved if the Lakers were prominent. Other series, too. I mean, Denver and the Clippers, that's been a beauty after the blowout in Game 3. Denver hangs around and wins Game 4. Do you get an assist on that air ball if you're Nikola Jokic? I think that's one of those aberration stats where that air ball that he threw up that went right over the basket ended up in the hands of his teammate. And the next thing you know, the dunk of Gordon dunks the ball. And did that beat the buzzer? That was another one. My God. If you're sitting there with the Clippers on the money line, could you feel any worse about what transpired there? A lot of gut-wrenching stuff taking place in the NBA playoffs. But 2 games tonight. We're going to go South Beach Syndrome. This is just an outside hunch. It's based on no numerology whatsoever. By all rights, you would have to think the Cleveland Cavaliers, like Greg Popovich once said after that whole thing with Kawhi Leonard being knocked out of the ball game by Zaza Pachulia, and I made him a Polish guy, by Zaza Pachulia, and remember the rant? It was just brilliant. What would anybody give any chance of the San Antonio Spurs beating this team? No, none whatsoever. But we had him. We had him by the jugular. Ended up losing, and that was just some seriously ugly stuff. But I'm thinking we take the South Beach Syndrome and in the Clippers Denver series, which has been a bloodbath. That's a really tough call, isn't it? Clippers bounce back in this one. Kawhi Leonard's playing great. That is not going to be. That's coming up Tuesday night. The other game tonight, Houston and Golden State. And Golden State didn't have Jimmy Butler in game number 3. They ended up on a winning end. So is their experience just too much for the young Houston Rocket team? I don't know. That's a tough call. I'm going to pass a roo on that game. Hockey, a lot of wild stuff happening. I happen to tune in. You have to be very lucky and very fortunate in timing your hockey viewing. Do you not? If you're not watching entire games, and it's tough to watch 80 minutes of hockey if you're not accustomed to it and you're not a diehard NHL fan. Playoffs couldn't be delivering any more than they do. It seems like every year. It's very much like the NCAA tournament, where they say the tournament always delivers. In this case, the NHL playoffs, virtual bloodbaths from start to finish. And you had a beauty last night. I happened to be lucky, and I tuned in at the 2 moments of truth in this contest between the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. Selective viewing, sometimes you're just getting that back and forth. Nothing's happening. You're wondering why you're watching a game at all. But if you happen to catch the climactic moments and the most dramatic moments, it's a thing of beauty. Bouchard's goal goes in with about 20 seconds ago, ties the game. Edmonton looked like they were on the threshold of being down 3-1. Kings taking full command of the series, and instead they get this late goal with the 6-on-5 empty net, take it into overtime, and after putting relentless pressure on in the offensive end, they finally scored on a power play and evened up that series at 2-2. So that was a tough one to take on the chin if you were back in the Kings last night. Tonight you have Tampa Bay and Florida. See, now this is a case in reverse. This is actually in a different area where the teams stay, and there's none of that South Beach syndrome. And I don't think hockey players are impacted by this sort of thing. Even if they were out, as probably many legendary players were, on an all-night bender the night before, you will get the usual insane action that you would anticipate in each and every game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tampa Bay was sort of dominated in game number 3, and yet came away with what appears to be a dominating victory. One of the oddities about hockey, where the Panthers were putting the pressure on. They had more shots, and they would be bombarding Vasilevsky, who's been very suspect so far in the series, although you can't really blame him too heavily for the loss in Game 2. It was a 1-0 game until the final seconds before an empty netter made it 2-0. Game 1, the Panthers got to him. And it's been ugly. That guy Hagel got suspended after a vicious hit on Sasha Barkov that knocked him, you thought, maybe even out of the next couple of games of the series. He's back because the hockey players just always play. Not a lot of love between these two teams. And at the same time, the way Florida has been resilient all year long and in the last couple of seasons, you have to think that probably even as a favorite, knowing that their fate will be virtually sealed, Tampa Bay, if they lose tonight, that the Panthers maybe find a way to handle that one. And then Colorado and Dallas, that's been a great series. Interestingly, should the Panthers, who I believe were plus 650 going in to win the Stanley Cup, and the Dallas Stars were plus 600. So those were the two shortest priced teams. Should Tampa Bay prevail tonight and put Florida in a jeopardizing position, and should Colorado win tonight and go up in that series and take a 3-2 lead, then you have the possibility of the two favorites going into the Stanley Cup chase being eliminated in the first round. A lot has to happen for that to take place, but always interesting because you thought you could throw an umbrella over a lot of teams. There are probably, even 6, 8 teams that have a shot to win it all from what you've seen so far in the NHL playoffs. So if you're sitting there with the two favorites there, you're starting to puke up a little milk of magnesia because there is a distinct possibility that they'll be even and even down a game, the two favorites, at this stage of the first round of the Stanley Cup chase. A couple of things just real quick on the draft. The best story of the draft had nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. It did have to do with the quarterback. And that was when the Giants took Jackson Dart, which a lot of people thought they might do, maneuver their way into that spot in the first round and take a quarterback after they got Carter, the supposed stud, and he has some injuries, which I don't know how much that makes him suspect as this generational player, but he certainly looked great when he was in college. So they got that guy with the third pick and took a quarterback with their later pick in the first round. And the best story had nothing to do with Sanders. It was Tommy DeVito demanding a trade. Not sure if that was actually transpired. It was just speculation, but I believe it was. He requested a trade from the Giants because he felt that they drafted a quarterback. I mean, who are you, fucking Aaron Rodgers? What are we talking about here? Tommy DeVito went from Rayos to Ragu in a matter of less than half a season. Had a couple of starts. Probably would be fortunate to make the practice squad now that they have Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson on the roster. And demanding a trade. I thought that was brilliant. All the speculation, too, that Shedeur Sanders was blackballed, and that's why I got into this whole thing earlier with the Little League parent. Is Deion Sanders enough of a Little League parent to make you think that, let's say, Detroit needed a quarterback, and you got Dan Campbell is in the war room there, beating his chest like he was Cro-Magnon man. And do you think that the executives are going to say, oh, no, we can't take him? His father's a pain in the ass. I don't think so. So all of those theories and the racism and all of these themes that people were trying to perpetrate out there as being truth about the whole Shedeur Sanders situation. Look, Quinn Ewers was supposed to be one of the top prospects. He went in the 7th round. Kyle McCord can throw the ball, went in the 6th round. There were a lot of quarterbacks that were considered to be the best of what was available in college this year that were drafted later even than Shedeur Sanders. The weird thing was Mel Kiper must be in a rubber room. I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to bet on. Does Mel Kiper come back next year on the ESPN draft show after the embarrassment that he was pumping this whole idea that, and of course, the cronies, as if they were Republicans in Congress, so I'll chime in. Mike Tannenbaum, oh, yeah, that was a shocker. But I have to give Sanders this when he finally got taken in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns. And the idea that there was some conspiracy out there where all 32 NFL teams said, hey, nobody take this guy before the 5th round. We're going to teach these guys a lesson is preposterous. But the celebration he put on, I mean, maybe that NIL money, if anything, it's eliminated a little bit of humility on some of these college players coming out and may have an opportunity to finally cash a big ticket. Because I thought he acquitted himself very well there. He was celebrating like he was the number 1 overall pick. So good for him. I thought he handled that much better than apparently he handled his interviews. And we'll see what kind of pro he develops into as he's in a quarterback room with about 7 different guys. It's good luck tonight. South Beach Syndrome, is it strong enough to get Cleveland and giving 8.5 to become a loser? And the Miami Heat, I don't know how much of a strong belief you could have in this team after the shellacking they took in game number 3. But if ever this was the conditions were perfect for Cleveland to just tank a game, maybe they win it, they sweep the series, but they win it by 4 or 5. Taking the 8.5 with the Cleveland Cavaliers, with the Miami Heat tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers. All right, good luck, everybody, with all your wagers. It's getting more and more insane, much more stuff to bet on, of course, as we thought, what are we going to do after the football season? We're immersed in maybe one of the best periods of time. Didn't even scratch the surface here with Major League Baseball, where great developments. Imagine if you would bet this guy, Eugenio Suarez. Was there a price on him hitting 4 home runs in a game? Now that would be the stuff of which legends are made. 4 home runs. Imagine if you had that. Have to be, what, 100,000 to 1? What were the odds of that? It's only happened 19 times now in baseball history. Hopefully you had that and many other winning wagers over the weekend. Good luck with your plays tonight, NBA and the NHL. And we'll see you tomorrow. Scotty M's going to join us on the program tomorrow. So have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.